So this week I have a video on a disposable camera and 3 really big reasons why you should consider something else besides this. These are fundamental things that it comes to for film photography and why you should consider something else. So let me break it down for you. So the first big thing that I have is the fact that it costs so much to get into a system like this. And I say system lightly because it is a point and shoot and it is disposable. But for 20 bucks for a single camera or a discounted price of like $32 for 2, I just don't find them cost effective anymore like maybe they were back in the day when film was much more readily available. When you're talking about the cost of 35mm or medium format or any other film process today, it's already pretty expensive. But when you add the cost of the film plus the plastic camera, it goes over what you would spend for a typical roll of 35mm film. But cost comes up again in a different way. And that brings me into the second point, which is talking about that cost bleeding into the development process. Now, developing with a lab is already pretty expensive, and it can be expensive if you do it over time, but in this instance, when you're talking about disposable cameras, they tend to charge $2 and $3 extra for removal of the film from the camera itself. So I wanted to throw that in there, that development cost also goes up potentially with a disposable camera. So the pro tip for this one is to remove the 35mm roll from the actual camera. From there, I just peel the label off of the bottom of the camera, and from there are 2 doors underneath it, which one holds a battery and the second one holds the 35mm roll. Essentially, you can use anything to pry open both of these doors. Usually what I tend to do is take out the battery first, then I take out the roll of film, and you can recycle both the camera and the battery, so that way you don't get that cost of the convenience fee from the lab if you're going to send it off, which is really cool. Which brings me to my third point in this, in that I think disposable cameras, though they can be fun, really are not as versatile or usable really as plenty of other options. But on top of that, you have this issue where you only get a certain stock realistically. Like there are a couple of manufacturers, but most of them use a 400 speed film inside these cameras, which isn't really great for a lot of situations. And on top of that, when it comes to the actual colors that you get, typically it seemed to be very washed, and the fact that the compositions weren't really good, I mean, maybe that's my fault too, but it just felt like things were just generally off. And when you have a camera that you've spent kind of money for and you're gonna have to process the film, you want something out of it. So for me, all of those things play into the fact that it's just not really worth it anymore, because it's not really cheap and fun, it's kind of expensive and mildly infuriating, to be honest. But before I leave you with a negative, I wanted to give you something positive to think on. So that's why I said let's talk about quickly an alternative to something like this that I think you will get a better bang for your buck and more enjoyment out of. So I have 2 options here that I want to show you really quickly just to kind of exemplify this idea. So the first thing that I have is a typical point and shoot camera. These are plastic, they are wonderful, they are just as junky but still better and more usable in my opinion for a couple of reasons. One is the fact that versatility I was talking about, being able to choose different stocks. These cameras are super cheap through thrift stores or family members or however you acquire them, but they allow you to interchange different rolls without having to send off the camera. You get more than one use in these. Even if you reload the other one, there's still probably going to be issues with that, I think. Versus these are made to accept all kinds of different 35mm rolls, and they have different functionalities, which I think make it really fun. So even if you want something simple that's point and click, these things are way better. You can choose different stocks, you get all the same point and click features that you want, but then you can reuse it, which is really beneficial. These are literally everywhere, so check something like this out. It doesn't have to be this one, but something like this. But if you wanted to step up your game just a little bit, I have one more that I think you would be really interested in. Now the second one I have is a big step up from a point and shoot. This is an SLR. This is still a film camera, but essentially you get all of the features that you would want, in my opinion, from an SLR. So an SLR is single lens reflective. So essentially this has one lens, the mirror goes in, flips around, shows you out the backside, that whole deal. I've talked about this camera plenty of times. If you want to see videos on that, I can definitely link them here, or they're on the channel, all that kind of stuff. But essentially, by having this ability to not only change out your film now you can mess with all the settings. You can really learn photography, in my opinion, with something like this. Super basic, super easy. I think these are maybe $100-200, something like that. Probably, I haven't looked in a while. I've had this one for a long time. But if you really want to get into film photography, stay away from those plastic junky cameras and get something either like the point and shoot that I showed you or something like this in order to really get into it. And I promise you will have way more fun learning the process with something like this, or even the Vivitar over there, the point and shoot, than you will with a disposable camera. Your images will look better, trust me. And that's what I have on disposable cameras. So hopefully you'll consider some of this before you go and pick up your next one, or if you're thinking about picking one up today, maybe this will steer you into something else. Maybe it won't. Maybe you have a better idea of how to use these than I do, and you have like a really good idea, and I would love to hear it in a comment down below. So definitely do that. Also, while you're down there, make sure to check out my links for Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Don't forget to hit that little thumbs up button. We super appreciate it. Beyond all that, I'm going to say peace out, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for checking this one out. Peace.